So in my predictions videos, I try and be as analytical and non-biased as possible, and I try and look at both sides and try and see what each fighter brings and remove my emotions from the equation, you know, who is my favourite fighter out of the two and who I actually just think is going to win. In this video, it's going to be quite difficult for me to do so because Aljamain Sterling is one of my favourite fighters on the UFC roster, but I don't think that should take away from my prediction when I first seen this, because I understand if one of my favourite fighters is way out of his depth, and I don't think so in this scenario. I think that Aljamain Sterling has a really good opportunity to get his foot in the 145-pound division against a bit of a, not a journeyman, Calvin Kattar isn't a journeyman, but he's become a bit of a gatekeeper in the last few years, and I think that Aljamain Sterling is going to win a split decision against Calvin Kattar at UFC 300. Now, I'm just going to get straight into it. I'm not going to waste any of your time. Aljamain Sterling is so unorthodox that I think if Calvin Kattar isn't going to be able to find his range and, you know, land the jab and establish range and whatever, I think he's going to have a hard time dealing with Aljo on the feet. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get outlanded by Aljo. There's absolutely zero way Aljamain Sterling outlands Calvin Kattar on the feet. Literally in no lifetimes does that happen. I'm not saying, like I said, Aljamain is a better striker than Calvin Kattar, but he can be so frustrating and crafty on the feet. We've seen it against Henry Cejudo. He uses really awkward and goofy style against Henry Cejudo, and it just kind of threw his tempo off and threw his pace off a little bit. Aljamain Sterling isn't going to finish Calvin Kattar. I don't think that's going to happen. This is going to go to a decision. I don't think he's going to be able to submit him because Calvin Kattar has never been submitted in the UFC. And I don't know, I definitely don't think that Aljamain Sterling is going to knock Calvin Kattar out. And if he does, he's been fucking blasting with Marab. He's been blasting the sauce. And I know people are going to say, well, Aljo got knocked out in his last fight. But what you've got to understand about Aljamain Sterling's last fight is Aljo only got knocked out in his last fight because he was literally forced to turn around after going 5 hard rounds with one of the greatest bantamweights ever, or one of the UFC goats people regard him as, in Henry Cejudo. He went 5 rounds with Triple C, had to turn around in 3-4 months with injuries and being way too big for the weight class. He was way too big for bantamweight, so he had no time to recover from his injuries, had probably about 2 weeks off, and then had to get straight back into training camp. So there's no wonder Aljamain has come out and said he was overtrained and, you know, he just wasn't ready, and he wished he took the time off because he thinks that he wouldn't have lost that fight, and it doesn't really matter anymore. He's never going back to 135. But after the fight, like I said, Aljamain admitted that he didn't have enough time to recover from his injuries, and you call it cope or whatever, but this is just from what he said on his podcast. And Calvin Kattar coming into this fight is coming off as 2 straight losses. Now, you can look into those losses and say what you want about them. I know one of them was an injury, and I'm pretty sure the Josh Emmett one was a bit of a robbery, but I'm not 100% too sure about that. But regardless, mentally, he's coming in on 2 straight losses, and Aljamain's coming off a knockout as well. So it'll be interesting to see mentally where the 2 fighters are at when coming in. But I think Aljamain's going to be super confident, going up a weight class. He doesn't have to cut as much weight. He's looking big. He looks like he's bulked on. He's had a lot of time off, so it looks like he's had a lot of time to pack on the pounds. And before I hear that people will say Aljamain is too small, because I know that even when people move up weight classes and they look big, they're still undersized. He's taken a lot of time to morph into this shape. And he was, like I said, he was massive for 135. He should never have been cutting down to 135. So the only argument that I have for that is that Calvin Kattar at one point has fought at lightweight, and he is quite big for the featherweight division. So it'll be interesting to see the size discrepancy. I don't think size will play as a massive advantage to Calvin Kattar, even if he does, because Aljamain's so strong and he's so dense. And as I said before, I don't think Kattar's going to get submitted. He's never been submitted in his life, and he's got quite good takedown defense. But I do understand that if Aljamain Sterling can get Kattar to the ground and hold him there, I don't see Calvin Kattar getting up. If Aljamain Sterling gets your back like he did to Petr Yan, and I think Petr Yan is a way better wrestler than Calvin Kattar, so I think that if can get Kattar's back, human backpack him, he'd probably just wet blanket him for the whole round, and I don't see Calvin Kattar getting up, and he'd do some serious damage on the ground. And at the end of the day, this isn't a fresh, hungry Calvin Kattar that we saw against Max Holloway, one that hadn't took loads of damage and had this fucking significant strikes record landed on his forehead. This is a Calvin Kattar that's coming off of an injury, 2 losses, you can look into them as you will, and it's 36, so he's way past his prime now. I just don't see a 36-year-old Calvin Kattar beating Aljamain, who I think is 34. So Aljamain's still pretty old himself, but he's still not past it yet. You know, he's probably got a year and a half before he starts to slow down and Father Time starts to catch up and kick in. So my prediction for this video, I'm sure you can guess it by now. I think Aljamain Sterling's probably going to win 2 rounds to 1. I think Calvin Kattar can have some success in the start of the fight, you know, especially obviously in the stand-up, and maybe take round 1 off Aljo. But I feel like once Aljamain gets into the fight and can get the takedown, it's a wrap for Calvin. And my boy, he's going to the featherweight division, baby. He's coming. Aljamain Sterling, greatest bantamweight of all time. I don't want to hear any slander. I don't want to see any slander in these comments. You can call me biased. You can say whatever. Like, you know, I remember I was kind of biased in the Volkanovski video, and I was pretty tentative about posting that. I don't even give a fuck about posting this one. Aljamain Sterling's going to wrap Calvin Kattar up. Going to win 2 rounds to 1, and we're making a run for the featherweight title, baby. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching this video, boys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.